America 2 video, number 3E. Welcome back to the America 2 video series. My name is still John Shar, and I'll again be your host for this video in the series where we continue our examination as to how excess population levels can and do negatively affect some 27 symptoms of societal decline in our country. We begin this video, number 3E, with number 16 in the list of 27 symptoms: lack of affordable health care for a large and growing number of citizens. All of us come by health care in one of three ways. One, we make enough money and or work for a company that provides health care at a discount to their employees and their employees' families. We get health care for ourselves and our families at a taxpayer-subsidized cost through entitlements. See number 15 immediately above. Or three, we do without health care. As America's population has continued to grow, beyond the point in time where there are enough good jobs in America to allow everyone who wants and needs a good job to have one, the availability of health care has been divided up differently as the population has grown. 60 to 70 years ago, the great majority of citizens got their health care taken care of by way of a combination number 1 and number 3 above. But today, a majority of citizens get their health care taken care of by way of number 2 entitlements and number 3 not at all above. This has been mandated by virtue of America's population, both legal and illegal, continuing to grow, while at the same time our economy quit growing in inflation-adjusted dollars in 1957. Near the beginning of this problem series, we discussed supply and demand and carrying capacities. Healthcare is just one of many areas where an out-of-sync supply and demand formula is rearing its head, and where we have exceeded our country's carrying capacity for workers needing good jobs, are giving us reason to think about how we could bring things back into balance and what exactly we need to do to make that happen. Fortunately, there is a way to do that. The way to achieve the kind of improvement we need in the healthcare paradigm is to restore our economy, make it so robust and so strong that the extra money coming into the government from taxes of existing and possibly lower tax rates than we enjoy today, from workers being paid a real living wage as opposed to a minimum wage, that the extra dollars needed to support a robust healthcare system for all citizens would always be available in the Treasury to pay the bills as they came due without breaking the bank accounts, back, and spirit of the citizens along the way. Whether we ever have a universal healthcare system like that will be, or should be, up to the citizens, and not be a toy for 535 self-interested politicians to play with at election time every 4 years to help them get elected, get votes and get reelected, and then talk it to death in chambers until the next election season comes around. Symptom 17. A need to provide for a permanent welfare class of citizens. It's difficult to admit or justify or even rationalize when we profess to be the richest country on earth. Really no need to beat a dead horse here. Providing for the ever-growing population of legal and illegal citizens has resulted in a large number of entitlement programs. The entitlement programs are meant to mask the fact that our government is in way over its head when it comes to managing our economy. As our population grows, while at the same time our economy isn't growing in inflation-adjusted dollars at all, has over the past 50 to 60 years' time resulted in our politicians creating band-aids in the form of welfare programs, entitlements, to create a facade for the rest of the world that says we're doing great as a country. America now has almost 25% of its total population, 90 million or more citizens, made up of families that have existed partially or entirely on welfare for more than 3 generations. And this condition will continue to exist until someone comes up with a way to provide meaningful paying jobs to all those needing and wanting one. Over the past 100 years, Americans' politicians have tried unsuccessfully to rejuvenate a stalled economy several times by having the government create make-work jobs to get people out of homeless camps and off of the streets. In every case, the results were temporary and overall ineffective. Some short-term benefits were usually obtained, but in 1937, the jobless poverty rate for America was virtually the same as when the Great Depression started in 1930, even after the results of all the make-work agencies were factored in. Who today even remembers the WPA, the PWA, and the CCC? About the only make-work organization that's had lasting impact was the Army Corps of Engineers, and their effects have been marginalized as our population has grown beyond the point where they can help the citizens totally recover from floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, earthquakes, and wildfires. The evidence is everywhere we look. Half-covered communities and parts of whole states remain in tatters because our population has outgrown our ability to fully recover from natural disasters, both money-wise and other resource-wise. World War II finally put everyone back to work at important work, saving the world from fascism for a while, but not permanently. And that's still today the government's preferred way of glossing over their lack of ability to actually grow our economy. When all of the government's Band-Aid programs start falling apart, we pretty quickly find ourselves in another multi-billion, multi-trillion-dollar war somewhere on the planet. Symptom number 18. Failure of educational systems to cost-effectively meet public needs and expectations. Possibly, there's no other topic that better demonstrates the negative impact that excess population growth has had on our country than education. 70 years ago, the student population was distributed amongst 3 significantly different levels of the overall population. 1, students who after high school attended college to become professionals in an established profession like law, medicine, engineering, accounting, education, architecture, and so on. Students who after high school attended trade school, where they learned to do mostly tasks that assisted other people with less school-taught skills like auto mechanics, construction, transportation, farming, and the like. Many of the trade schools also helped their graduates become apprentices for established larger companies that specialized in their specific trade. It got them in on the ground floor, so to speak. And students who after high school, sometimes even before graduating, became jacks of all trades, applied their experience where they could. Some of these ended up being very wealthy. Others weren't so fortunate. Most existed on a low rung of the middle class ladder for their entire lives. But being on a lower rung of the middle class ladder then, back in the 1950s, allowed citizens to have better lives than the 21+% government's numbers of those living on an upper rung of the poverty ladder are able to enjoy today. As the nation's population continued to expand beyond the point where there are as many good-paying jobs as there were people needing a good-paying job, the requirements for getting a good-paying job were increased as a way of artificially adjusting the supply-demand equation for good jobs. Over about a 30-year period, it became the norm that what previously had required just a high school diploma now required a bachelor's degree in a specific broad area, and what previously required just a bachelor's degree in a specific broad area now required a master's degree in a specialized area, and what previously only required a master's degree in a specialized area now required a doctorate, sometimes more than one, in a very specific area, just to make the list of applicants that would be invited to interview for a job opening. As the pressure on the schools to address the perceived elevated needs of the applicants increased, the schools attempted yet another supply-demand adjustment. The schools increased their attendance cost in an attempt to lower the incoming student demand to match their staff, building, and operating expenses, including scholarships. But at some point, the cost became too great for many prospective students to borrow enough money to cover, and these students are forced to settle for less desirable schools or no further school at all. When, as happens, some of the best and brightest students who couldn't get a big enough scholarship decided not to borrow the equivalent of the cost of a home to get a degree, which in turn doesn't guarantee anything in the way of employment. This allows students who may not be among the best or brightest, but who have access to enough money to pay the university's costs, to disproportionately become the future leaders of our society. And when this occurs, society loses. Society loses twice. The universities and their staffs are the biggest winners in this game. The explosive growth in population resulting in the explosive money demands of the schools trying to meet the increasing number of students going through the school systems has also opened a wide door of opportunity for the government to indoctrinate the students going through the various school systems. In return for taxpayer money infusions to help the schools, the government extracts a quid pro quo in the way of assisting the schools with their curriculums. Schools are encouraged to select textbooks that the government approves. In some instances, the government selects textbooks that it feels are politically correct and that paint the government in the best possible light, as opposed to selecting texts that might have a different point of view, even when or and if the government rejected point of view is the more factual one. When our nation was just starting out, all schools were privately owned, and the parents and grandparents of the children who attended the schools paid for the school's construction and operation. Sometimes they even borrowed money to help the school and make these things happen, betting on their children's and grandchildren's futures. That system gave us some of our most remembered political leaders like George Washington, John Adams, Thomas Jefferson, Benjamin Franklin, James Monroe, Abraham Lincoln, 2 Roosevelts, 1 Ronald Reagan. It also gave us others who never ran for or held any public office, like Edwin Hubble, Jonas Salk, Clarence Darrow, Nikola Tesla, George Westinghouse, Thomas Edison, Niels Bohr, Thomas Paine, Albert Einstein, Frederick Douglass, Ernest Hemingway, Walt Disney, Jim Henson, George Lucas, Madame Curie, Gene Roddenberry, Jack Kilby, Robert Noyce, and Wilbur Norval Wright, who individually and collectively advanced knowledge all over the world, and in so doing, helped America become the most envied nation on the planet. But with the growth in population and the lowering of real income by way of government inflation and devaluation of our currency, the original model for building, staffing, and curriculum selections in our schools is no longer available to most people in most communities. Now most all schools are built and operated by corporations, LLCs. The corporations still get the money they need as much as possible from the parents of the students, but when that's not enough and the parents and donors are tapped out, the schools solicit and bring in money from the state and national governments and sometimes a few oligarchs. State and national government and oligarch financing always comes with strings attached. As these negative advances in education in our society came about, all of them came about in direct proportion to the pace at which our population in general and student populations specifically exceeded our ability to provide good paying jobs to our workforce whose taxes build and support the schools and education to our students at affordable costs. Symptom number 19. Ongoing high levels of illegal immigration. America is not the only nation putting up border deterrents to keep out unsolicited and unwanted immigrants. Some 70 plus other countries at last count doing the same thing for the same reasons. Namely, their ability to provide their existing citizens is already stressed to the max, and they aren't willing to ask or require their citizens to continually live on less than they already have in order to accommodate the newcomers from other countries. The primary thing that differentiates America from these other 70 countries is that, for the most part, America is still a bigger target of opportunity for immigrants than the 70 plus other countries are. The immigrants' motives are mostly honorable, and they all just want a better place to live than where they came from. The same could be said for the original immigrants that came to America from other countries and stayed, often beating long odds to become our ancestors. But that still begs the question. It begs the question as to whether and when such immigration should be curtailed. to protect the citizens already living in the countries the immigrants are trying to immigrate into. The natural laws of cause and effect and supply and demand are immutable. They work their magic 100% of the time, no matter how many man-made laws we might try to implement to hold them at bay. America has been trying to pass laws that overrule the natural laws like supply and demand. But every attempt to do so has failed. All of the symptoms of a society that is overstressed due to excess population now exist in America. It is seen in each of the symptoms preceding this one up to this video and more to follow. Most of the same symptoms also exist in the other 70 plus countries that are blocking immigration entrance into their countries right now. But most of the other 70 countries may not have as many welfare programs receiving government, taxpayer support as America does. In each instance, the other 70 countries, like America, have become unable to provide the basic sustenance requirements for their existing populations and have exceeded their carrying capacity in citizens. At last count, our planet had 192 separate countries. And over the past 30 years' time, more than 70 of those countries have reached the tipping point in population and are implementing programs to help them survive in a world whose population continues to expand at unsupportable rates. It will likely not take more than 30 more years for the remaining 122 countries to join the 70 plus current countries looking for ways to survive in an overpopulated world. There are ways, short of nuclear wars and Armageddon, to get things back on track for America and all the other countries of the world. But the way forward means first identifying and facing up to our real problems, like this one. Symptom number 20. Increasing numbers of environmental breakdowns. Pollution that causes global warming, vital resource shortages, broken pipelines destroying the soil surrounding the pipelines, fouling the underground water table to provide drinking water for people, for growing crops, and so on. The excess population problem, when we think about it, tends to put many preconceived notions into a different perspective from what we all see on television daily, and in fact it serves to help define the scope of the various symptoms it gives birth to. In 1901, our planet only had 1.5 billion people on the whole planet. It now has a bit over 8 billion people. If we had the luxury of solving our problems in every area when there were only 1.5 billion people in America, we could take a lot of years between recognizing a problem and finding a solution to the problem and still expect to win the game in the end. But if we choose to take a lot of years solving our problems now, including this one, excess population befouling our environment, starting from where we are right now on the timeline, we will most certainly lose the game. Right now, worldwide, and certainly here in America, governments are trying to stay in power by convincing citizens, mostly through carefully choreographed media presentations, that they have a good beat on things. Situations well in hand. Things are actually are great right now and getting better all the time. Instinctively, many, if not most citizens, know that the government stories are either not true at all or are grossly exaggerated in order to paint the politicians and the government in the best possible light. The increased velocity of the trashing of our planet, purely for the sake of money, is proceeding at a rate that will likely spell the end of human life as we know it, sometime within the next 150 to 200 years, unless it's curtailed. That is literally the lifetime of what will likely be, by then, a single generation. All anyone has to do to see how quickly things can spin out of control, environment-wise, to visit New York City or any city of significant size when the garbage pickup teams go out on strike. Stinking trash will build up so high in 2 to 3 weeks, people can't see over it or even see across the street. Almost people accumulate like that, too. Then, when the strike ends, within a week or two, all the stinking trash will be loaded onto barges, taken a few miles offshore, and dumped in the ocean. Homeless people will likely still be here. There. Out of sight, out of mind. Population solved? This symptom of the needs of a population out of sync with the needs of its environment is among the most serious that we face today. As the population grows, the environmental problems grow proportionally. The only way to head off this disaster is to, over the next 50 to 100 years' time, match the size of the problem, population, with the carrying capacity of humans on our planet, country by country. Our planet has a fixed carrying capacity for every creature living on it at any point in time, including us humans. Repeating a couple of paragraphs from the first page in video 3A because they bear remembering. Humans have a unique combination of physical and mental characteristics that few, if any, other beings on our planet have. 1, free will. 2, reason. 3, opposable thumbs. It would seem like a combination like that should allow us to recognize and solve problems like no other creatures on our planet, even problems that required removing obstacles that were impeding our progress. These are great gifts indeed, and can be used for good or for evil, or not used at all. We can always elect to abandon reason, just twiddle our opposable thumbs, and using our free will, choose to do nothing. I just let our problems overwhelm us. But that would seem to be a poor use of such great gifts. Thanks again for watching and listening. Thanks for caring about our country. and wanting to see it, our country, America, and us, become all that we can be. Together. Be well.